What happens when emotions take over? Work suffers, relationships crumble, and peace disappears. Japanese philosophers solved this problem many centuries ago by developing 4 simple techniques that transform feelings without suppressing them. Their system helped maintain calm during difficult times and works just as effectively in the modern world. The first technique instantly changes how you handle emotional moments. It is a method refined through centuries of real-world trials. In 1632, the swordmaster Yagyu Munenori stood calmly as 3 assassins approached the shogun, whom he had sworn to protect. The other guards of the shogun tensed up, their hands trembling on their sword hilts, but Munenori's face showed neither fear nor tension, only perfect clarity. The assassins hesitated, confused by his unusual composure. In that moment of their uncertainty, Munenori disarmed the first attacker in an instant, placing himself between the threat and the shogun. The remaining assassins, having lost their advantage, retreated, unwilling to face his unparalleled presence. What witnesses mistook for extraordinary courage was not the suppression of fear. It was something far more powerful. Munenori had completely transformed his emotional stance. Throughout his career as the shogun's personal protector, he repeatedly demonstrated this striking emotional clarity under extreme pressure. This ability was so valuable that the shogun ordered him to document his approach for future generations. The result was the Heiho Kadensho, the life-giving sword, a text studied for centuries by Japan's ruling class. While on the surface it dealt with swordsmanship, its deep wisdom addressed something more fundamental: the mastery of managing the mind. Munenori's key insight seems almost too simple. Emotions are not things that happen to you, but rather positions you consciously choose. This contradicts how most of us experience emotions. We feel anger rising within us, fear gripping us, or anxiety washing over us. As if these emotions are invaders we must either fight or surrender to. Munenori realized this was a fundamental misconception. Just as a swordsman changes his stance depending on the opponent and terrain, he taught that the mind can switch between 5 emotional positions. The first position is like a mountain, exuding strength and stability. When a samurai stood in the mountain position, opponents felt his unmatched presence even before any movement began. The second position is like a river, flowing, observant, neutral. In this position, you neither advance nor retreat, but simply observe with full clarity, allowing the situation to unfold without emotional distortion. The third position is like a reed, which appears yielding but actually redirects pressure. When a strong wind blows, a rigid tree breaks, while a flexible reed bends and returns to its original state. This emotional stance absorbs pressure and channels it elsewhere. The fourth position is like the wind, an unexpected movement that changes the entire dynamic. When opponents prepare for a direct confrontation, a sudden shift to an unexpected emotional position provides a tremendous advantage. The fifth position is like a shadow, a complete reframing that changes the very nature of the interaction. A shadow does not fight light. It exists in another dimension, making direct confrontation impossible. These were not abstract concepts, but practical positions that Munenori taught the shogun to apply in different situations. When the third shogun, Tokugawa Iemitsu, faced a political crisis threatening civil war, his advisors insisted on immediate aggressive action, the mountain position which they believed demonstrated necessary strength. The council chamber filled with tense voices demanding decisive military intervention. The shogun, trained in Munenori's method, understood that this standard reaction could lead to disaster. Instead of the usual authoritative command, he consciously switched to the river position, quiet, observant neutrality. This unexpected shift changed the entire dynamic of the council. As the shogun maintained perfectly calm observation, his advisors gradually calmed their own emotional stances. In this new clarity, diplomatic options, invisible in the heat of emotion, suddenly became obvious. Instead of sending troops, the shogun sent a carefully crafted message to the potential rebels. The crisis, which could have cost thousands of lives, was resolved without a single arrow being fired, and all because one man changed his emotional position. We see the same dynamic in everyday situations, though few realize it consciously. When you are unfairly criticized at work, most people automatically choose either the mountain position, aggressive defense, or the reed position, an emotional slump. Both of these positions are actually weak because they are reactive, not conscious. Those trained in Munenori's approach understand that these are merely standard positions. They can consciously shift to the river position, neutral observation that allows them to see the situation without emotional distortion, or perhaps to the wind position, an unexpected response that changes the entire interaction. The beauty of Munenori's approach is its simplicity. You don't need complex emotion regulation techniques or years of meditation. The next time you feel strong emotions rising, simply ask yourself, what position am I in right now? What position would be better? This awareness alone creates the first transformation. You shift from being controlled by emotions to managing your emotional stance. But Munenori knew that merely changing position wasn't enough. To truly master emotions, one must understand what happens in the critical space between the trigger and the response. The tea master Sen no Rikyu was once serving Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the most powerful and temperamental warlord in Japan, known for executing servants for the slightest mistakes. During an important ceremony attended by assembled lords, Rikyu accidentally spilled a drop of tea on the tatami mat. The room fell silent. Everyone knew of Hideyoshi's legendary temper. The warlord's hand slightly reached for his sword. Instead of panicking or frantically apologizing, Rikyu created an intentional pause. In this brief interval, which Japanese philosophy calls ma, he examined the fallen drop. Then, with perfect calm, he used his tool to turn the accident into an elegant pattern, incorporating it into the ceremony as if it were intended. Hideyoshi's hand relaxed. By the end of the ceremony, instead of punishment, the warlord expressed newfound respect for the tea master. Later, he told his advisors that this moment of pause showed more courage than any battlefield feat. This seemingly simple story contains profound wisdom about mastering emotions. The Japanese concept of ma represents a meaningful gap between things. The silence between musical notes, the emptiness that gives a vase its shape, and, most importantly, the interval between an emotional trigger and the response. In Japanese culture, this space is considered sacred. It manifests in garden design, architecture, conversation, and art. But its most powerful application is in emotional life, where this interval is the birthplace of freedom. Observe children. Their reaction to emotions is instant and automatic. A child feels anger and immediately lashes out, feels fear and instantly retreats. Now observe how masters react. Between the trigger and the response, there is always a space, however brief. This is not hesitation, but presence. In this tiny gap lies all the difference between a reaction and a response, between being ruled by emotions and having a choice. Japanese arts cultivated this quality through mindful practice. Zen archers held the bow at full draw for a long time, not for physical strength, but to create space, where perfect action arises naturally. When the swordmaster Miyamoto Musashi wrote that the way of strategy is the way of nature, he was partly referring to this natural interval that exists between all things. By consciously expanding this interval, mastery becomes possible. In our accelerated world, this sacred space has almost disappeared. Messages demand immediate replies. News provokes instant reactions. Conflicts escalate because no one creates space for clarity. But the solution remains as simple as in Riku's time. Even a brief pause changes everything. A breath before responding to criticism, an hour before replying to an angry message, a night before making an emotional decision. The beauty of is that the pause itself becomes a powerful response. When someone sharply criticizes you and you simply create space, instead of immediately defending or attacking, the entire dynamic changes. This space often achieves more than any words. Japanese philosophy recognized that true emotional mastery lives in this interval, not in controlling emotions, not in expressing them perfectly, but in the sacred space where choice becomes possible. With strategic positioning and the sacred pause, you've laid the foundation for emotional mastery. But what quality of mind is most effective at filling this space? When Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, was attacked by 5 assailants simultaneously, witnesses described an extraordinary scene. As the men rushed at him from different sides, Ueshiba moved like water, calm on the surface, but powerful in motion. Without visible effort, he redirected each attacker's energy, causing them to collide with each other or fall harmlessly. Most amazingly, his face remained completely serene, without tension or triumph. This was not the suppression of emotions. It was their transformation through Mizu no Kokoro, a mind like water. Water embodies 3 paradoxical qualities that make it a perfect metaphor for emotional mastery. In stillness, water reflects reality without distortion, like a mountain lake showing a pure image of the world. This quality allows for clear perception without emotional coloring. In motion, water adapts to any container or obstacle without resistance, retaining its essence but changing its form. This provides responsiveness without rigidity. When water is channeled, it creates tremendous force, not through violence, but through harmony with natural principles. This creates impact without exhaustion. Japanese calligraphy masters meditated on water before creating their most important works. Business leaders contemplated flowing streams before major negotiations. This was not a poetic ritual, but practical preparation for emotional fluidity. In modern life, we face emotional challenges that seem like insurmountable obstacles. Difficult colleagues, unexpected failures, persistent problems. Most people either fight these realities, exhausting themselves, or completely surrender, losing their integrity. Water teaches a different response. Not rigid resistance, not passive capitulation, but adaptive harmony. It does not fight obstacles, but flows around them, preserving its nature. This water-like quality arises naturally through 3 simple breaths. The first breath, imagine still water, reflecting reality without distortion. The second breath, visualize flowing water, moving around obstacles without resistance. The third breath, feel the directed force of water, harmonizing with natural forces, not opposing them. When you face criticism that normally triggers a defensive reaction, a mind like water completely transforms the experience. Instead of a threat to be fought, criticism becomes information for reflection, a path to flow around, or energy to redirect toward growth. A mind like water creates perfect adaptability in the moment, but to maintain this state requires one final element that ensures long-term transformation. In 1945, Japan lay in ruins. Cities were destroyed, industry had collapsed, the economy was shattered. The Toyota company, once prosperous, was on the verge of disappearance in this devastated landscape. The problems facing the company's leader, Kiichiro Toyoda, would have broken most executives. The natural reaction would have been radical action, massive restructuring, large-scale layoffs, complete reinvention. Instead, Toyoda applied a philosophy that transformed not only his company, but also the approach to overcoming difficulties. Kaizen, continuous improvement through small steps. Instead of trying to rebuild everything at once, he focused on improving one tiny element of production each day, one process, one component, one movement at a time. His approach seemed agonizingly slow to Western observers, but within a decade, this patient, cumulative work not only saved Toyota, but made it one of the most successful companies in the world. The wisdom of Kaizen contradicts our instincts about transformation. We are drawn to dramatic breakthroughs, complete reinventions, heroic journeys of change. Instead of trying to transform your entire emotional landscape at once, simply focus on improving your response bit by bit. Perhaps it's an email from a colleague that always irritates you, or a family dinner that inevitably creates tension. When you make your response to that trigger just a little better, not perfect, just better, everything begins to change. Like water slowly shaping stone, these tiny improvements accumulate into a deep transformation. The simple practice is this: each week, choose one emotional trigger and make one small improvement in your response. It's not about perfection, but about progress. The power of Kaizen in emotional mastery is that it aligns with how we truly change. Small improvements over time compound into what seems like effortless mastery, precisely because it developed naturally, not by force. Japanese understanding holds that true transformation comes not from dramatic changes, but from patient refinement. One small step, then another and another. These 4 Japanese approaches are not isolated techniques, but a natural sequence that completely transforms your experience of emotions. Heiho Kadensho teaches strategic positioning, changing your fundamental relationship with emotions. Instead of being ruled by feelings, you consciously choose an emotional position based on what the situation demands. Ma creates the sacred space between trigger and response, granting the freedom of choice instead of automatic reaction. In this interval, however brief, possibilities open up that are invisible in the heat of emotion. Mizuno Kokoro fills this space with a mind like water, providing adaptive power that clearly reflects reality, easily flows around obstacles, and powerfully channels energy without resistance. Kaizen ensures this transformation endures through small, continuous improvements, creating emotional mastery that seems effortless because it evolved naturally, not through force. By starting with one, you create a foundation for the others to develop naturally. Like Japanese masters who refined these approaches over centuries, you will find that true emotional mastery is not perfect control, but perfect harmony. A way of being that transforms every aspect of your life.